Good afternoon, folks. I found a little article here. It's actually from WordPress. Interesting, kind of like it. It's called Not a Lot of People Know That. And there's different publications. Anyway, it's probably the third one I've found. You can do your own research on some of this stuff, but you can find this probably at WordPress, no problem, if you can operate the internet. One of the quotes that's here, I guess, that drives this particular publication is that we do not believe any group of men adequate enough or wise enough to operate without scrutiny or without criticism. We know that the only way to avoid error is to detect it. The only way to detect it is to be free to inquire. We know that in secrecy, error undetected will flourish and subvert. And that's by J. Robert Oppenheimer. Anyway, this has to do with the electric vehicles. Are they as green as they appear? It says yet another study finds that whole of life, in quotations, carbon black footprint of electric cars is a little different from conventional cars. And it goes on to say that April 14th, 2021, Jeffries, I don't know what his first name is. It doesn't mention his first name here in the article that I can find. Maybe I'll run across it as we go through anyway. And I guess one of the research things he does, he notes that that he concludes an electric vehicle must be driven 200,000 kilometers or 124,000 miles before its whole life carbon emissions equals that of an internal combustion engine. The analysis is very similar to some other stuff that's come out. It takes a tremendous amount of energies and by extension CO2 needed to manufacture a lithium-ion battery. However, they point out that the typical EV is on average 50% heavier than a similar internal combustion engine, requiring more steel and aluminum in the frame. It's concluded that the embedded carbon in an EV when it rolls off of the lot is therefore 20 to 50% more than the internal combustion engine car. The analysis suggests that the modern lithium-ion battery has approximately 135 miles of range before it degrades to the point of becoming unusable. An extended range Tesla Model 3 has a... Yeah, I meant to say the analysis shows that the modern lithium-ion battery has approximately 135,000 miles, not 135 miles of range, before it degrades to the point of becoming unusual. The Model 3 Tesla can drive 134,310 miles before dramatically losing range. Incidentally, the Model 3 warranty covers the battery for a lesser of 8 years or 120,000 miles and does not apply until the battery has degraded by at least 30%. If Jeffrey's analysis is correct, and we believe it is, then an EV will reach carbon emission parity with an internal combustion engine vehicle, just as the battery requires replacement. That will come to as a huge disappointment for those believing that the EV adoption will have significant impacts on CO2 reduction. Don't know if I've done a little bit of research, and there's a kind of a wide variety of range, but whenever you do, if you keep the car over 120,000 miles, then, and you do have to change the battery, it can cost you anywhere between maybe $8,000 and $18,000 depending on the car, whether it's the smaller EV or the more expensive one. And these being emphasized, these figures assume that energy required to produce and charge electric cars is still mainly fossil fuel sourced. This will certainly remain the case for a long time in China, where many of the materials come from. Even in Europe, renewable energy will make little inroads in the foreseeable future, particularly in steel making. One other factor also needs to be taken into account: increasing fuel efficiency of petrol diesel cars. I also want to read a few comments here that some of the people make. Some are interesting, some of them are funny. One of the guys says here, I happened to see an ad for a new VW EV that boasted it was zero carbon. Then the small print stated that was only up to the point that it left the dealer. And somebody else commented to that, replied to that. Can VW really be claiming these cars have absolutely no CO2 footprint before purchase? Really? Kind of interesting. Another person commented, electric, in parentheses, or in quotes, equals coal-fired. Yes, it does. Electricity comes from somewhere. You do save money on electricity over the life of the car and the battery, but at the same time, since it cost, I saw one video where it cost like $6,000 less per mile to drive up to 77,000 miles. You can look on YouTube and find that guy's video where he does that test and does some pretty good math. All of it adds up and everything, but to offset the extra amount of money it takes, or carbon emissions it takes to actually build the car with the extra weight and extra steel and frame and everything in it, and tremendously amount of extra materials to be mined and stuff for the building of the battery. That's a lot more carbon that goes into just building the vehicle. So that's kind of interesting too. So, you know, that's where they get the parity of you don't really save any carbon emissions till you get past 120, 130,000 miles in comparison between a electric vehicle and a combustible engine vehicle. And let me see here. We'll take a look at other comments here. The guy Keith, there have been several European studies on this, and they came to the same conclusion. I've written my MP about it, and she sent my letter to the Ministry of Transport. Their reply was utter tripe. They refused to accept the findings of the research and anything about the problems of toxic materials used, which is utterly stupid and closed minds in our government. We have a little hope of any common sense being displayed. And somebody replied to that. They refused to accept the findings of this research or anything. They have all been infected with the 3 monkeys virus. So let me move on down. What about the extra weight? How does it affect the tire wear and road damage? I hope this was also considered. Not sure that was. Have a little bit of expertise on the tire wear. Extra weight on the vehicle does have something to do with tire wear, and it does have more damage on the roads. So you know, and they're not paying gas tax because it's an electric vehicle. So just like North Carolina, a lot of states have implemented the highway use tax whenever you go to buy a new car. So just bought one about a week ago, and it was a small car. I only paid like $7,000 for it, but it was probably worth more than that. You know, $12,000 I think it was, or $12,500. But I had to pay $276 in road highway use tax on the car. So got to do a little more investigating on that in North Carolina. I knew there was going to be something that was going to have to start getting more money into the coffers, because they bleeded the North Carolina highway roads fund down to nothing. It's in the red. It used to be like $800 million in the black all the time before one of our governors came in, and I won't mention her name, whenever she transferred a lot of that money out into other areas to spend. So yes, somebody else, AC Osborne, yet not only the tire, but also brake wear as well, both of which contributes to more pollution than the ICE engine exhaust do, which is combustible engine, internal combustible engine. Let's see here. Mad Mike, aside from the carbon footprint, the climate evangelists still harp on about the running cost advantage of EVs. It matters not that the differential is purely due to the favorable tax advantages, which will be short-lived when the government has to find a replacement for the road tax and fuel duty, which I was just talking about. If the EVs outnumber the internal combustible engine, road pricing will come in along with any other method the tax man can come up with to force us off the road. Take that with the ever-rising cost of electricity which even alarmist scientists say is in the cards, and the advantages of EVs will quickly disappear. When all that happens, we'll be left with essentially short-range cars that have a lifespan that matches the life of the battery, as no sane person would pay for a battery that is way more expensive than the current value of the car, which means that our fleet of cars will necessarily be newer and production of cars will increase if people can afford them. No wonder car manufacturers are racing to go to electric. The pressure on commodities will be enormous, and that is another thing too. If we make the huge flip over to electric vehicles and the charging that will put on the electrical grid, they will have to spend billions, maybe trillions of dollars on the electrical grid just to handle the electricity that people are going to need if every other household has an electric vehicle that's got to be charged up too. So, and the thing about what they were saying about when you get a Tesla that's got 124,000 miles on, the battery goes out, pretty much you probably can't sell it, because who wants to buy it when you got to spend $8,000 to replace the battery, if that's what it's going to cost. Maybe it'll be cheaper when more batteries get out there, but still, if the car is worth $6,000, are you going to pay $8,000 and then have to and being able to keep the car, or are you going to just get rid of it and just scrap it? So all that money, and the electric car is more expensive, of course, right now. Maybe it'll get cheaper, but so the plan is, depending on how much you drive, that could maybe, say if you drive 20,000 a year, which is what I do, that'll last me 6 years. So I buy the cheapest model Tesla for $35,000, and in 6 years I have to scrap it out because it's cheaper to scrap it than it is to change the battery. So that's just saying, maybe with a little interest, that's burning $7,000 a year times 6 years. So that's a very expensive thing to be thinking about when you can't get any money out of the car within 6 years after you drive it that long. And those that put more miles on those things, my God, you can put, if you have to do some driving for work, you can burn that 120,000 miles up and have to replace the battery in 3 years. So that's $35,000 you just threw away in 3 years. So not many people are going to be able to go that route. It'll be interesting to see if that kind of information gets out there and what it's going to take. I know everybody wants to have an electric car, and it's the going thing and all that, but right now we're not at that point. And by 2030, when GM says everything's going to be electric, we're not going to be at that point. So they're either going to lose money or people are going to keep their combustion engine cars. So I still hope we got gas at that time. Anyway, there's a lot of great comments on this thing anyway, so I'll just kind of cut it off right there, and you guys can do your research on it. But there's nothing I've said anyway that isn't actually reasonable. I didn't try to find any outlandish information or throw anything in there that didn't seem reasonable, to understand or look up, or even believable. So if you factor that stuff in, you're probably going to stay away from the electric car. I know I will for now, unless something big changes. And the only other thing that really kills me is the government. People that make a little more money can buy the higher dollar electric cars, but they get these big tax credits. All that means is it's not a deduction, it's a credit. So they get that money back in their taxes every year for just purchasing an electric car. All that means is all the people out there, even the poor people, they're the ones that have to pay the more taxes, so the government can give the tax credit money back to the people that can afford to buy the electric cars. And with the information I've given you, and that will be very often. Well, of course, that credit's going to disappear too, because they won't be able to sustain it. If you get, half the freaking population buying electric cars, they're not going to be able to give credits to everybody. It's just going to be outrageous. So you have to think about that stuff down the road as well, So it's the same thing as always, the government giving credits out there to promote some sort of either the climate agenda or moving the money from one person to another, which is all it is. So just a little bit to think about there. Appreciate you listening in, and like I say, if you will, just hit subscribe and hit the like button. That helps move me up in the searches and stuff. So hopefully down the road, if you'll click that little notification bell too, you'll be able to get a little notification on your phone whenever I put something else out. And I'll try to find you some easy to verify stuff. And like I say, my idea is to keep the truthful stuff out there. So nothing way out there or whatever. But anyway, thanks for listening in. Have a great day.